So I've been giving some thought to what happened last night. Although it was really eventful and as black as I've seen that place in a minute, I haven't been there in a very long time, which is cool. Since the 90s, late 90s. They keep saying that it's the same thing, but it's really not the same. I sometimes think that we, and by we I mean black folks, brown folks, try to carve out our own space because we don't have the means, and by means I mean like the financial means, to rent a space and then put in the work to curate a certain kind of party or workshop or event that we would like for ourselves. We always need help from allies. But in doing that, we lose some of the things that we want. We always have to make this sacrifice. And I do understand that there are times we always have to make the sacrifice. But sometimes I wonder if the sacrifice is worth it. Last night was really nice. Supreme Queens, that leather house, and which is a matriarchy house led by Izuli, really put together this event. I couldn't be mad because, as Liquid said to me one time on the phone, we were discussing what was going on and some of the hardships that Izuli was facing and the frustrations. We said we can't back out because this is what we modeled in the community, right? So we modeled this kind of community building, this let's recognize people in the community. And we also, through BLX, went to pay black and brown presenters for their labor and these kinds of things. So we couldn't back out from our little sibling, but it was disheartening to see the sacrifice that we have to sometimes make because those people who call themselves allies aren't real allies. They think they are, right? I'm gonna say it. There have been some well-meaning white folks, right, who thought they were well-meaning, but they were making it harder for us. And then when you point it out to them that maybe they can move in a different kind of way, and this is the kind of support that I need, they give you pushback and get defensive and all of those kinds of things, which should alert them to the fact that they're not being allies. But that's a different conversation. Last night, I realized that Izuli and the Supreme Queens and the others that Izuli got to come together in a way to support black and brown educators because we had to use or incorporate ourselves within that space of whiteness. We were still doing all of the work, which I don't begrudge that, even though it was tiring for myself. But we didn't get the kind of it was half of what we really wanted to do, right? So Izuli wanted to attract more black and brown people in the community to show them that, hey, these are the educators that we have in the community. These are the other organizations that we have in this community. And although you only know about this white part of it, there's something different, right? There's something more. But because of the way that system was set up, the people that we might have reached in our own community, our own kind of circle, never really got to benefit in the ways that we hoped that they would, because we would had hoped to have advertised this event within our own kind of community, and they would have been able to come and experience us in this kind of way. Not to say that we didn't also want the organizer, the events community to partake. We did, but it should have been a joint venture, and it wasn't. the only way it was a joint venture, at least for me, and I could be wrong, was that we provided the education, the tease crafty part of it for them to experience something, but it was only for their people and not really for ours. And that's disheartening. It's disheartening for, at least for myself, that the people that came to my table, it was nice to be able to teach how to create a mini flogger, but also in talking about flogging, they didn't know. They were like, so I hit him with it, right? And yes, but there's more to, so I hit them with it, right? And that part was difficult. There were some POCs that did come to the table, and I was able to have a conversation, but I couldn't have like really meaningful conversations about flogging with anyone, not just a few POC people that came up to the table. And then also, a thing that you can see was very different was the, I don't want to say the privilege, because even I have some privilege, right? But I think it's more like the entitlement that some folks have. So the difference is this: the POC, or the black folks that walked up to the table, said, hey, what is this? And then I'd have a conversation. Others would come up to the table and say, and would just take it and start walking away. And I would say, excuse me, hello. And I would have to like, no, that's not what we do. This is what's happening. And then it'd be like, oh, okay. And then I would ask the question, why would you just take it? Because it was there. I thought I could. Really? Did you? And then what happens then? So when we talk about community and wanting to educate our community, I saw last night that there was a clear difference in, one, what we call community, and two, how we go about educating our community. And that community that was there, a large part of that community is not educated. And the people who call themselves leaders in that community for their community is not educating their community. And so they're doing a disservice to community. Whereas what in the Supreme Queens wanted to do by bringing educators into a space, although it was for a very limited time, it was the only way that they saw that they can get some education to community. But like I said earlier, it wasn't like for our community, right? Because of the way it was set up and the way some information was withheld. But anyway, I wanted to unpack that. I still do have thoughts on some stuff. I think that even though that community, the leaders of that community keep saying, we're young, and that's fine to be young, but you have an opportunity to collaborate with organizations that are willing to teach, but you have to pay those. Those educators want to get paid. And you have the financial means. I'm not trying to count anyone's money because maybe they don't, right? But let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you have 100 people at your party. They're all paying, I don't know how much to do. I know how much it says on the website. Can the educator get a percentage of that door? Can you set it up so that there's education to your community? Because the community that I saw didn't have any education. Because I don't think that they're being taught what it means to be leather, right? Everyone is wearing some form of leather. Everyone loves to be in a harness, so we're wearing the costume of leather, or what you perceive to be as leather. But really, it may be fetish. We don't know because there is no conversation. And there's a lot of lingerie, which is fine. But then you have, and this is where I'm saying where the education for that community may be beneficial, and those people, the leaders of that community, may want to educate their community, and maybe it's because they don't have any education and they're parroting what they're hearing and or reading, right? I don't think it's much reading, but or seeing. So you have people wearing lingerie, but then wearing leather harnesses over the lingerie, but then wearing sneakers and hankies around their necks. And you're that's what I'm talking about, the education. So I'm not mad at any of those things separately. But when you throw the whole kitchen sink at it, you're okay. So if I wanted to have a conversation with you, and I did try at the table because I saw some things and I said, oh, that's really nice. Like the collar with the hanky tied through the O ring, right, in a bow, which is cute, right? And I'm like, oh, that's really nice. And they're like, I know, it's so cute, right? And I'm like, yeah, what's that about? And they don't have any, oh, I just thought it was cute. And oh, I just did a thing. And so they're dressing up in like this costume thing, but they're not understanding any kind of meaning behind it. You come to a party that is supposed to be a BDSM party, but no one has educated them on the social mores of the leather community, even though the leaders of the is saying words like leather and trans and yeah, and we're gonna be free and just be ourselves. But what does that mean? Where you're in a space and people are wearing lingerie with leather harnesses over it and sneakers and bunny ears. And so what is it exactly that we're doing? So I was confused and but had the opportunity to talk with some people at my table about when we were making the mini floggers about flogging. And it's like, what is that? So I brought a flogger with me. It was handmade for me. And people were like, oh my God, it's so expensive. It is, but it's the quality of the flogger, right? Because that's what I wanted. And I was able to afford it. So I did, right? But not everybody can afford it, which is why we were doing the mini floggers, right? And we talked in those kinds of ways and about the different kinds of skins that floggers are made of, or the things that you can make a flogger with, and then what to do once we make it. But I was so distracted sometimes by the fact that they just thought it was a cute thing to hit somebody with, which they were doing at the table. And I was like, hey, you don't hit that way, right? So there's no education, basically, is what I'm saying. There's no education when it comes to the accoutrements of leather or BDSM when they're talking about the implements that we have or that we use. And there's no education in the symbols that would signal what it is that one likes, because there's no education around it. There's no conversation around it. So what you get is a party that has a dungeon and has dungeon equipment, right? Which is like another luxury, another privilege, I will say, that a space has that we don't have, right? Because we can't afford it. And it's being used to just sit on and have a conversation, which is nothing wrong with having conversations, but it's like you have the equipment, but no one knows how to use the equipment because there's no education around it. And if you wanted to use the equipment with someone, you don't know how to start that conversation because, like me, I was talking to people, but I was talking to people trying to understand what the collar and the hanky through the collar was, or what the collar and the bunny ears and the harness was. Like, what is going on? Like, it's difficult to approach someone to do something because you don't know what they're there for. Although it was very nice because we had a really good DJ, right? Which was fantastic because we got to hear black music. And by black music, I black music, which brought a vibe, which meant it was good for dancing sometimes or moving a certain way. And that was really nice to get into the feel of a thing. But that's all that could have happened because all of the people there, even though they were wearing the gear and the symbols of something, there was no understanding of can I approach that person and say, hey, you're wearing that hanky in your pocket on the right. Does that mean what you think it means? Or you have on these harnesses around your waist that have attached other harnesses to, and you have hankies on this side in this color. Does that mean what you think it means? And if it does, I'm going to approach you. But then it doesn't mean what you think it means because you don't know what it means. Because, vicious circle, you're not being educated in that way. Anyway, I think I'm rambling. I do have more to say about it. I just wanted to, because I was like laying here, put it out there and see what others think about how we educate the generation that is coming up in BDSM or in kink or in fetish, and even if they know the difference between those things. If they've explored their own selves and their own kind of sexuality in a way that is deeper than putting on kitten ears and saying you're a kitten. And that's cute, but what the fuck does that mean? Like when it comes to expressing your sexuality, what does it mean when it comes to how you show up in certain spaces where you're told you could be free and those kinds of things? What does freedom mean in those spaces? So I'm just wondering, talking out loud, and wondering what others may think, and maybe they can enlighten me. Maybe you can enlighten me, and if you can enlighten me, please do. I am so open to having a conversation, a dialogue about how, one, I could be of service, right? Because I don't mind being of service. Two, if I'm wrong and you're like, Sir Raven, shut the fuck up. Cool, right? That's an option. Or if we can really have a conversation in real time about certain things. And where we can come together to have a community that's not only safe, but that there's education around what that means. But again, I'm open. Let me know.